Okay, good. I'm ready.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Philip Sandfield, the Port's Media Director, and with me, as always, is Port of Los Angeles Executive Director Gene Seroka. Gene, before we introduce today's guest or really talk about anything else, please share your thoughts on President Biden's visit to the Port of Los Angeles last Friday.
Well, good morning, everyone, and hello, Philip. It was truly amazing, an honor and a privilege to welcome the United States' 46th President, Joe Biden. The administration's efforts since inauguration have been outstanding, including the passing of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, all the work on supply chain from the executive order to the Supply Chain Disruption Task Force, nominating the Port and Supply Chain Envoy, General Steve Lyons, and their convening powers with constant communication between the private and public sector, all in an effort to help drive goods to consumers and businesses. The visit was part of an ongoing conversation we've had with the administration and the president himself since he took office. And he deservedly praised our dock workers, truckers, warehouse workers, and so many others essential to this supply chain. The visit was a recognition of the hard work and partnership here at America's Port and across the country.
Truly an historic day here at the Port. Now, Gene, please start us off by introducing our featured guest.
Oh, Philip, I'm really excited. Today, we'll be joined by Dr. Michael Dykes, President and CEO of the International Dairy Foods Association. IDFA members produce about 90% of the dairy products sold in the United States. In just a few minutes, we'll have a conversation with Michael about the challenges that U.S. exporters are facing and what's being done to address and help them.
Thanks, Gene. Please share the great news about May.
Philip, May was the third best month ever in the Port's 115-year history. We moved a remarkable 968,000 20-foot equivalent units. That's slightly behind last May and October of 2020 for the best month ever, and we were shy of that record by only 30,000 TEUs. Another important stat, this month of May at 968 is 21% higher than our previous 5-year average for the month of May. Truly a sensational period of reporting. And here are the main drivers behind that strong volume. Retailers across a wide section of 125,000 importing companies continue to replenish inventories and keep up with the American consumers' buying demands. While consumer strength is strong and we're looking directly into the eyes of high inflation numbers at 8.6%, producer prices were also announced today at a 10.8% jump. And while we're all cost-minded, we feel it at the pump and at the grocery store, we're going to continue to buy. Our high level of savings accounts at more than $2 trillion nationwide are also met with revolving credits of $1.2 trillion across the country. That's the amount of money on our credit cards that we're paying off each month. The bottom line is we'll continue to watch this consumer activity, but also a number of other areas, including manufacturing, jobs creation, and the work of the second quarter economy. And our workforce met the challenge again this month by setting another productivity milestone. In May, we averaged nearly 12,000 TEUs loaded off and back onto each vessel. That beat our previous record last summer in 2021, which stood at 11,300 TEUs. This exchange rate, as we call it, is the best in the business.
Very good news, Gene. Can you give us a snapshot of the May imports, exports, and year-to-date volume?
Yes, imports were very solid at almost 500,000 TEUs. And although they're off by about 6% from last May, compared to the 5-year average for May imports, we're 20% higher. And something to note here, while many Americans worked from home during COVID-19, we saw people buy more furniture, appliances, fixtures to update their bathrooms and kitchens. That's not going to happen every year. But the retail sales of finished goods remain strong, and the parts and components going to American factories are equally as impressive. On the export side of the business, finally, some good news. Exports were up here at the Port of Los Angeles by 14% at 126,000 TEUs. That's the most exports we've processed since November of 2020. After a 3+ year decline, this is welcome news, but we still have a lot of work to do. 1 month does not make a trend. We're going to continue to go all out on this issue from Washington to Sacramento and right here at home in Los Angeles. Empties are still elevated at 340,000 TEUs, off by about 7% compared to last May. Imports remain high coming from Asia to Los Angeles, and the need for containers to turn them around quickly in Asia is strong. Year to date, at the 5-month mark in 2022, we come in at an exceptionally strong 4.5 million TEUs. As anticipated, we're matching box for box with 2021's record-setting year. Now we're gearing up for the second half of this year and an early peak season with arrivals beginning at the end of this month.
Thank you, Gene. Key analytics and trends. What are you watching closely right now?
Philip, we're focused on 3 benchmarks. First, the vessels headed here and departing from Asia. Second, ships in the queue awaiting berth here at the ports in Southern California. And third, how fast we're moving cargo off the docks by truck and rail. Let's take a look at these numbers. First chart shows us the number of ships leaving Asia, and they've been very steady since the beginning of the year. This week in particular looks good at 47 ships on the departure number. And those areas here have been very consistent all year long. We've witnessed no precipitous drop, as some observers had called for, with the lockdowns in Shanghai now in their 12th week. And while we understand there have been impacts on the ground to families and friends, there have also been impacts at the subassembly, manufacturing, and land transportation levels. But with the China government and ports prioritizing the long-haul cargo, especially that headed here to Los Angeles, the volume remains consistent. Second, the number of ships staging at the 150-mile marker and inward is down from 109 back on January 9th of this year to today's number, 27 ships. We've been chipping away at this all year. It's the lowest number of ships that are in the queue since last summertime. All of this in an effort to prepare our docks for peak season arrivals and keep that cargo moving out into the American economy. Third, getting cargo off the docks is key to welcoming the next ships. Port of Los Angeles's Port Optimizer shows a 30-day velocity number that tells us, as of this morning, that rolling average of velocity stands at nearly 179,000 containers. We've been at the 200,000 plus mark recently, so there's much more work to do in picking up this outbound cargo run. Rail operations continue to be our biggest and current challenge. There are more than 29,000 rail container units on the ground right now in Los Angeles, with 15,000 of those aging 9 days or longer. A same-day snapshot in more normal times would show that we would have 9,000 units on the ground and none over 9.5 days. The rail dwell times on marine terminals now stand at 7.5 days, and that's 3 times longer than normal before this surge began. And as late as January of this year, when that normal dwell was about 2 days on average. We're working around the clock with the White House, senior officials in Washington and Sacramento, local authorities, as well as both private sector railroads, the Union Pacific and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Other important measures that we're watching are truck dwell time, sitting at 4.4 days, and the street dwell of containers and chassis now sitting at 9 days. Normally, that truck dwell is between 3 and 4 days, so we're not far off the mark. But as we have been reporting for months now, the street dwell of containers and chassis normally had been about 3.5 days. It now stands at 9. And another key indicator we keep a close eye on warehouses still have less than a 0.5% vacancy throughout the Southland in Southern California, particularly acute in the Inland Empire counties of Riverside and San Bernardino. We can't build these facilities fast enough. And even though we boast 2 billion square feet from the shores of the Pacific now out to the desert region of Southern California, we've got to turn that cargo out faster and have enough space under roof to manage all of these consumer and manufacturing products. So to me, here's what's behind all these great numbers. Our workers are meeting the challenge of this cargo flow every single day. Peak season cargo is on the way, combined with other seasonal products. Think of back to school, fashion, and fall fashion goods as well. And for us here in Los Angeles, we must keep the cargo flowing off the docks at a high rate of speed to work the next vessels that are on their way here to the port from Asia.
Thank you, Gene. A reminder to media, if you'd like to submit a question, use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and please include your name and affiliation. Now, Gene, please welcome our guest.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Philip. The agriculture roots of Dr. Michael Dykes go back to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where he grew up on a small dairy and tobacco farm. Michael's had a successful career as a veterinarian, an ag policy expert, and a government affairs strategist. Michael has been advocating for global competitiveness since he was selected to lead the International Dairy Foods Association back in 2017. Today, Michael's joining us from the IDFA's Leadership Symposium at Cornell University's beautiful campus in Ithaca, New York. Michael, welcome and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Michael, let's start with the challenges that you and I have been working on for some time now for the U.S. dairy exporters, what they've been facing, and especially given the impacts of the pandemic and supply chain issues, what are the farmers facing today on the dairy side of the business?
Well, Gene, I like to say from our farmers' perspective, the cows have continued to produce milk every day during COVID. Everything's changed, remained the same. They've seen no change. Our exports are growing. Our ability to get our dairy products on the vessels, in the containers, on the vessels, and to our customers around the world is critical to us. And we have to be reliable suppliers. They need our products. They need them when we tell them they're going to be arriving. They need them to be there. So we are so grateful for the work we've done with you and the fabulous people of the Port of LA and for the folks at CMA CGM. Tremendous partnership. The alliance we announced in January has made a tremendous difference for our dairy industry. Our exporters have learned so much and have benefited so greatly from this alliance. I like to use the number, Gene. Across all ports, we've seen a 53.7% increase in dairy products being in containers in the first 21 weeks of this year. That's remarkable. 110% increase at the Port of LA. Gene, we couldn't have accomplished what we have accomplished for the dairy industry without the great partnership with you and with the leadership of CMA. And that includes Ed Aldridge, the CEO of the Americas, and the owner, Mr. Rodolph Sadi. It has been fabulous. I've met with the owner, and I can tell you they are committed to doing even more in the future.
Well, thanks, Michael. And to think that all started off with a phone call between us and some other close partners back in between Christmas and New Year's of last year, when many others were trying to do their level best to fight all these supply chain hurdles. You were really focused on the task at hand. We had about 500,000 containers at that time that were being shipped back empty from the ports here in Southern California. And you and I thought, hey, let's just take a sliver of that. Let's see what we could do here in the Southern California region for your membership and carve out a few of those empties and see if we could build something really quickly. And it's just amazing how it's taken off from there. And I know you've been advocating, in addition to this groundwork operationally, for a whole slew of other issues to help represent your members. Can you give us a little idea as to how much work that you all have been doing, especially on the policy front and with so many other topics in front of you?
Gene, I want to say our members are business people, and we wanted to find business solutions to this issue. And the supply chain is such an endless series of steps. We wanted to find one place we could begin to tackle it and make a difference and work out from that. And it has worked beautifully. We have worked with the White House. We've worked with the Department of Transportation. We've worked with USDA. I can't say enough about Secretary Tom Vilsack and his willingness to engage on this issue and to prioritize the importance of exports, agriculture exports. Agriculture exports is the only sector of the U.S. economy that has a positive balance of trade, meaning we export more than we import. It has been tremendous. I can't say enough about it. I've had constant communications with Secretary Vilsack. I know you've been in constant communications, as have carriers have been, with the White House. We've all been working to try to find solutions. We have met several times with their members, with FMC Chairman Mathey. We have been doing everything we can to get agriculture products in these containers and on these vessels. We've done it for dairy. We've also recognized the importance of all of agriculture. We have, and you have helped us organize that. We've had calls for the cotton industry with this as part of this alliance. We've also helped the almond industry as a part of this. So we've been reaching out across agriculture. It's been tremendous, Gene. It's made a difference. It has made a difference for our processing members, and that in turn has made a difference for individual dairy farmers.
And this is just one example of many of the selfless activities that so many of our contacts and colleagues in the industry have been trying to cobble together, work and move mountains to get this supply chain going. And it still is a relationship-based business at the end of the day for all of us. And with that in mind, the federal government, U.S. Congress has also done some heavy lifting by passing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And as you know, Michael, about $17 billion has been designated to ports and waterways around the country. From your vantage point and that of your members, how should we allocate this money? How should we push it out the door to help the American exporter most?
Dean, we need connectivity. And we need to connect. If we think about trade, the imports are going to the urban areas. Where are the agriculture exports originating from? The rural areas of America. We need connectivity. We need speed. We need to use that money to advance both of those causes. We need more inland areas where these chassis and containers can be stored, so that we got them closer to the source, that we can fill them, we can get them to the ports. We need greater connectivity at all modes of transportation. We need greater space for rail at these ports so that we can use the rail to get some of these agriculture products from the interior to the ports. And we just need more money to make the things happen, the change happen faster, Gene. And we need greater visibility. We need a digital freight portal system, so that we can know in real time where all of the containers, rail cars, all modes of transportation, where that is. I liken it to when we check into the airlines and we check a bag, we know when our bag is loaded. We know our bag's on the flight. We know when our bag's made the transfer. We should know that about our containers and our exports, Gene.
Hear, hear. I agree with you. And this is something we've been championing for a number of years now on digital technology. So proud to see Secretary Buttigieg, along with Secretaries Raimondo and Vilsack, working as the Supply Chain Disruption Task Force tri-leaders, pushing forward with the flow concept, freight logistics optimization works, to help bring together folks on that sharing of information that's so important. And second, that strategic land use. That goes back to what we talked about with a multimodal freight plan at the federal level and state freight plans more locally, so we can help make those connections for our importers and exporters. And this is not about opening up every parcel possible just to simply store containers and assets. It's about strategic land use, as you rightly said, and getting close to where our customer is, such as the Central Valley here in California. And Michael, with all that, I mean, it sounds like you pulled together about 5 years of work in the last 6 months alone. But what's next? What are you guys working on next to help promote American exports, jobs, and the responsibilities that those great member companies bring to the table every day?
We are working across our members. Workforce is the number one issue facing all of our members. It's the number one issue facing all manufacturers. How do we attract and how do we retain the best talent? We are working with all of our people leaders, the chief human resource officers across our membership companies. We're here at Cornell on a leadership symposium. We're preparing the next generation of leaders. Gene, we are working night and day on how do we attract and retain the very best of talent. We're going to need that. We're going to need to make sure we've got an inclusive, an equitable, and a diverse population of workers. We are competing for talent, Gene, just like everyone else, and we are focused on it.
That's fantastic. And you know, this sounds like one of our many conversations over the phone or regular talks about business in Zoom. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Michael Dykes, the president of the IDFA, the International Dairy Foods Association, who's been such a great partner, not only of the Port of Los Angeles, but to the American people and the supply chain that he represents through his members. Next up, Philip, I think we've got some opportunities here to take some questions from the media.
Thank you. The first question is timely. It just came in from Stas Margaronis at the American Journal of Transportation. It's directed at Michael. Are you satisfied that the Ocean Carrier Reform Act, which passed the House last night, will address recent detention and demurrage problems encountered by U.S. ag exporters?
We have been very supportive of the Ocean Shipping Reform Act. We're very pleased to see it pass. We have met with members of Congress. We've had several legislative fly-ins on that. We know that a portion of the bill is to address demurrage, and we'll see how specific the rules are on that. But short answer, yes, we are optimistic that it will help address the demurrage issues, and we are very pleased to see the Ocean Shipping Reform Act pass. And we will work with FMC on the rules, and we'll comment if there's a comment period to comment.
Thank you, Michael. Another question for you, this one from Bill Mongaluzzo from the Journal of Commerce. Are carriers still prioritizing the return of empty containers to Asia, or is pressure from the White House producing greater availability of containers for ag exporters?
Well, I have praised CMA for the alliance that we have with CMA and the Port of LA. We have talked to almost all ocean carriers, and I'd like to see others step forward and do what CMA has done. And I'd like to see other ports step forward and work with us like Gene Seroka at the Port of LA has done. That's what we need, is we need more of these vessels leaving with the containers filled with agriculture exports. We are working aggressively to try to make that happen. I want to give a shout out to Secretary Vilsack on this very comment. He has made it clear to ocean carrying vessels that they should prioritize exports and making sure the containers are filled with exports. We would like to see others step forward, and we are willing to work with all of them, just like we are with CMA.
Thank you, Michael. A follow-up on that, on the ASRA topic from Dan Ronan at Transport Topics. Does the legislation passed and that President Biden is expected to sign, does it give the FMC enough teeth to do its job?
We think so. We'll see how the implementing regulations are written. But yes, we think so. I'm an optimist. I believe it. I have faith in the system. I know from our many meetings with Chairman of the FMC, Daniel Mathey, that his intention is to improve the process and improve the system. And so I remain optimistic that yes, it will.
Thank you. This next question is directed first at Gene, but Michael, perhaps you'd want to weigh in. It's from Chris Isidore at CNN. What's your view of the state of negotiations between the PMA and ILWU? Are you confident that a deal will be reached without a work stoppage? And are you concerned that even if a work stoppage doesn't take place, that we could see some kind of job action that slows the movement of cargo over the docks?
Chris, thanks for joining us today. And yes, I am confident. I think you saw the joint release that was put out on the wires this morning from the International Longshore and Warehouse Union and the Pacific Maritime Association, the employers group in charge of these negotiations. Both pledge that they keep working, and with all this cargo coming, we understand the task at hand. From my perspective, we've got savvy negotiators on both sides of the table who understand what's at stake economically. These 29 ports representing some 9% of our nation's GDP. And as we've seen from the very beginning, the Biden-Harris administration, the cabinet, senior policymakers have made a strong effort to develop relationships and stay available to both sides as we move through this important negotiating period. And just last Friday, the president himself met with both Jim McKenna, the CEO of the PMA, and Willie Adams, the international president of the ILWU, in ongoing conversations with both sides. It's got the attention from the highest level in our country. Chris, thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Gene. A couple of reporters are asking you, Gene, about the China cargo now that COVID lockdowns appear to be easing. Are you expecting a significant increase in cargo as a result?
No, I'm not. And here's why. I lived in Shanghai for a number of years. I still keep up with friends and their family members from the past 2 decades. And especially now, as we're in the 12th week of the COVID-19 lockdowns in Shanghai. You may recall early on when we heard the notice come down from the municipal government, I thought we'd have a small lull and a pretty quick bounce back. But the resiliency of the China-based folks in this supply chain has been really something to admire. The ports and central government, along with the municipal government in Shanghai, have prioritized that long-haul cargo, including ours, coming here to Los Angeles. We never saw, as I've reported many times before, the precipitous drop in cargo that some observers had called for. And while there have been impacts on the ground, from small manufacturers and assembly locations to big factories, land transport trucking companies, the resiliency has never shined brighter. And with a great manufacturing community west of town, think of the old Hongqiao Airport and beyond to Suzhou, Hangzhou, out to Nanjing in Jiangsu province, you have a choice. You can go to the Yangshan deep sea port off the southeast coast of Pudong that's been operating under the great leadership of its CEO, Yan Jun, now at about 85 to 90% of true capacity, even given all the headwinds he's faced. Equally as important, that choice has led some people in central China and the export community to utilize the port of Ningbo. During this lockdown, Ningbo's export volume is up 25%. They've literally helped pick up the slack during these lockdowns. And as always, our thoughts are with our friends, family members, and so many others who have been in this lockdown environment now for nearly 3 months. Children have been trying to go to school online. Families trying to manage their own business and the businesses of their employers and their own proprietary interests from home, from their apartments for a long time. While we're glad to see these lockdowns loosening, health and safety first for our friends and families on the ground. Appreciate the question. Thanks.
Thank you, Gene. The next question is directed to Michael. It's from Colin Campbell at Supply Chain Dive. U.S. dairy exports have been on the rise for the last couple of years, and again this year. What's driving the increase?
Consumer demand for wholesome, nutritious, sustainably produced dairy products. We are the number 3 producer in the world, and our exports, we are on pace to have another record year this year. We're moving not just volume, but we're also moving more value-added products in the form of cheese and whey and other products. Demand around the world is increasing. 95% of the consumers reside outside the U.S. We're going to see another 25 billion pounds of milk produced in the U.S. between now and 2030. And the vast majority, approximately 2/3 of that, will be in the export markets. So our future is largely dependent upon our ability to export. And consumer demand is there. And the demand is there for the nutrition that we produce as the most efficient dairy producers in the world in the U.S.
Thank you, Michael. We have a few questions left in the queue. So if anyone from the media has a question, now's the time to drop it into the Q&A box. Gene, Lisa Bartline from Reuters asking, is the port seeing any reduction in imports due to the trucker strike in South Korea?
Hi, Lisa. Nothing yet. Now we're in the first full week of that trucker strike in South Korea. We're watching very closely, keeping up with our friends at Incheon and Busan ports just to understand what's exactly happening on the ground. And these relationships go back decades as well. At the same time, we're also seeing that ship calls for discharging exports and loading up, discharging imports and loading up exports are taking place regularly scheduled. So we're hopeful here we can get this strike resolved quickly. I understand that the petrochemical industry and some of the sub-assembly factory units are starting to become impacted, and that was to be expected. We've got to get this resolved quickly and keep global trade moving. South Korea is one of our top 3 exporting nations here to Los Angeles, and it's important that that cargo keeps flowing unimpeded. Thanks, Lisa.
Next question is from Margaret Spiegelman from Inside U.S. Trade. Michael, this is directed to you. Following up on the Shipping Reform Act, besides the demurrage fees, is there anything in particular that you see as the most important provisions in the bill?
Well, probably another important provision would be the increased disciplines to make sure that containers are leaving the U.S. ports filled with product. And that we are addressing empty vessel returns. That's probably the other most significant part of the Ocean Shipping Reform Act.
Got it. Thank you. Last question here, unless we get any more in the next minute or two. This is from Austin Landis and with Spectrum News. And he's asking about our container, long-dwelling containers. He said that he's seeing that they've stagnated in recent weeks. Can we explain the fluctuation and the lack of a steady decline?
Yeah, Austin, thanks for the question. And right now it's all about the rail. As I've said before in this and previous press conferences, right now we've got nearly 29,000 containers designated for on-dock rail loading sitting at our marine terminals here in Los Angeles. On a normal day, that should be about 9,000. And we've got 15,000 units that are aging 9 days or longer. As recently as February of this year, we had none that were aging that long. So if we strip out and bring the rail product back to where it normally should be, we have no problem with aging containers, and we're moving imports fluidly through this port complex. And as I've explained earlier, from the White House to the private sector railroads, this harbor department in Los Angeles and so many others, including our Los Angeles marine terminals, we're working all out to catch up on this rail cargo. And please remember, Austin, this rail cargo has increased 6-fold since February. The 2 Western railroads asked for increase in volume to utilize their assets and trackage better, and the industry delivered. Now we've got to continue to pump this cargo out. At the same time, the inland rail terminals, think of Chicago, Memphis, the Dallas Metroplex area, among others, have got to get this cargo out to the importers and the BCOs quicker. It's sitting for longer times, just like we've witnessed here at the port and other locations. And we've got to increase that velocity of the imports once they're discharged from the rail in these important interior locations and get them out to the last mile facilities, storefronts, and fulfillment centers much quicker than we're doing right now. And I do know specifically that General Lyons is working very closely, like we all are, with the BCOs and importers to speed up that process. Thanks for the question, Austin.
Michael, Gene, that concludes our questions today. Gene, I'll turn it back to you for some final thoughts.
That's great. Michael, again, thank you very much for being with us today. I look forward to continuing our work together with your membership and you in the weeks and months ahead. You've made a really big impact, Michael, and we're going to keep pushing as hard as we can.
Thank you, Gene Seroka. You've been outstanding to work with. I can't say enough about it. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me today. And thanks for what you've done for the dairy industry.
You're welcome. It's a privilege. Thank you, Michael. In closing, last week, the Los Angeles Harbor Commission approved a milestone $1.9 billion budget. While it's filled with numbers, charts, and graphs, here's why it's important. First, by California law, every dollar we earn here at the Port of Los Angeles goes right back into our facilities. And that's exactly what we've done. Over the past 2 decades, the Port of Los Angeles has reinvested more than $4 billion. Yes, $4 billion in our marine terminals, as well as environmental, transportation, security, and public access projects. And our new budget this year calls for strategic investments in physical and digital infrastructure, sustainable technology, and community projects up and down our LA waterfront. Second, our highly skilled team, led by Executive Officer and CFO Marla Blevins, works every day to ensure that our port is fiscally strong now and well into the future. That's why we continue to hold the highest port credit standings from Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch ratings. The goods movement sector and the people who work in it account for 1 in 9 jobs here in the 5-county Southern California region. Moving forward, it is going to take a greater level of investment than ever to increase those jobs and meet the challenges of the modern supply chain. And that's why we're laser focused on the financial health of this port. Thanks for your time again today, and as always, your interest in our business. Philip and I look forward to being with you again